Greetings, YouTube. I was born north of the Mason-Dixon line, which means I am a Yankee born and bred. And I live in New Hampshire, which is about as far north as you can get without hitting Canada. The only place farther north than us in the contiguous states, I believe, is Maine. But even here in this bastion of Union New England, you can see Confederate flags. And whenever I see a Confederate flag, either in person or on television or a photograph or what have you, I always think one thing. I think, look, it's the second place banner. Because that's what the Confederate flag is. It's a declaration that you came in second. Because, and I'm sure this is a shock to some people, the Confederates lost the Civil War. Now, this isn't even reflected in the number of memorial statues that we have in the United States. There are some, I believe, 4,000 statues around the nation from coast to coast, even in Montana, a place that did not exist during the Civil War, commemorating the Confederate dead. There are approximately 400 statues commemorating the Union dead. So if you go by the number of statues, the South won. But of course it didn't. The statues are all part of an ongoing propaganda campaign to make the South look like it didn't lose. But the South lost. The South really never had a shot at winning, to tell you the truth. The number of Southerners at the time of the war was approximately 9 million, a third of which were slaves. And the northern population was approximately 31 million. So the only shot the South had of winning was to get England to recognize their existence. But once Lincoln declared the Emancipation Proclamation, there was no way that England was going to justify backing the Confederates, because now they had explicitly made slavery the single most important issue about the war. Because at the time, of course, England had abolished slavery quite a bit earlier than the U.S. But of course, a lot of people seem to forget that the main source of the rift between the North and the South was, in fact, slavery. Yes, you are going to hear many people say that it's about states' rights. In fact, I can guarantee you someone will bring states' rights up in this comment thread for this video. But it's important to remember that the most important state right that the South was attempting to preserve was the right for white human beings to own black human beings. Now, I need you to stop for a second and think about that. People use the word slavery flippantly, and slavery is still unfortunately present in the real world. But not a lot of that slavery is of the same variety as that was practiced in the South. Hereditary slavery. Slavery where everything that you do is owned by another person, and any child that you have, by extension, is owned by someone else. And that child is born into chattel slavery. They have been cast their lot at birth. And they will remain a slave forever. Every ounce of their labor ever produced will be done so for someone else. They will never see the fruit of their own work. It will always belong to someone else. It will belong to the person who, under the rules of the Southern law, owns them. That's a horrifying thought. It's even worse than the type of slavery practiced by the Romans, which was captured civilians and military personnel from conquests, or from those areas that would not submit to conquest once they'd been won over through military victory. You could become a freed slave in Rome. You could become a politician after becoming a freed slave in Rome. You could become a statesman. You could buy your way free. You couldn't do that in the South. In the Confederacy, you were born a slave, you would live as a slave, you would die as a slave, and your children would repeat that cycle forever. And the Civil War was about their right, the Confederate right, to continue to own human beings. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, the Virginia governor, Bob McDonnell, Republican, has proclaimed April to be Confederate History Month in his state, without referencing slavery or civil rights. The move has angered civil rights leaders and revived a controversy that has lain dormant for 8 years. There is a number of articles that I'm going to link to in a MetaFilter topic thread on this, simply because it's all neatly encapsulated in one location. Makes things just easier for anyone who wants to reference this information. And the thread comment section on that topic is also quite interesting. One of the members of MetaFilter even went so far as to write and sing a song about this topic. He is a fellow YouTuber, apparently. So I will make a notation to his page as well, in case you're interested. I can't tell you how frustrating I find it that people are still essentially fighting this war. The South lost. Now, the South was not well treated by the North at the end of the war. However, how the South treated its newly freed slaves was far, far worse. In fact, race relations got worse after the Civil War. Can you believe that? The nadir of race relations was actually during the 1920s and the 1930s, many years after the Civil War. So, I don't want to listen to people saying it's about respecting the heritage of the Confederate people or the white people that fought the Confederate War. Those that fought the Confederate War were traitors to the United States. They broke their oaths to the Constitution. They were oath breakers. How is that laudable? Why is that some kind of heritage that you want to preserve? Your ancestors were traitors. Now, if you accept that and move on, I can understand it. But if you want us to continue to consider them somehow noble, they weren't. They led to the deaths of 700,000 Americans. 700,000 people died in that war. All of them U.S. citizens. So I have never been able to fathom how anyone consider that their quote-unquote Confederate or Southern heritage as something that they should look to as being laudable or virtuous in any way. I just don't get it. My ancestors didn't show up into the United States until after the war. So at least I am not culpable in any way for those deaths. But I can tell you right now, if my ancestors had owned people, I would not be proud of this. And if they had participated in a traitorous revolt against my nation, I would not consider it something I should look upon kindly either. But that's just me. For some reason, there is something in the Southern Constitution that makes them think that we collectively should value the secession of their nation, should value the traitorous act they committed against the United States of America. And this particular governor has brought that controversy to the fore again. But it really is a perfect Republican win. It appeals to the white Southerners, all of it, many of which I'm sure have either members or leanings towards the lily-white Tea Party, and it disrespects black citizens. So he can't lose. Because most black people, guess what, aren't Republican. What a shock. So, I want to hear, how do you feel about the American Civil War? Do you think that the Confederate history is something that should be celebrated or just recognized? Inquiring minds want to know.